Hey, Erica, you dressed up to come see us?
I went to
You,
work today.
oh man.
Yeah, I went into the building today.
Oh, okay. You
Yeah,
dressed up for the people at work.
I dressed up for myself.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
I don't get to do it much, so when I do, make take time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had to go in for a lot of meetings, having meetings about meetings.
Right. That's how it is.
It's always good to see my team and have a little fellowship. So
Okay. So you completely work at home.
you could say 90%. I just go up twice a month to make sure my cat card doesn't expire because you don't check into the building a certain amount, it'll expire. You won't be able to
Mm.
get in. And then I have to go into our red zone, which is the secret zone where all documents nobody's supposed to see, or only
Mm-hmm.
certain people. So I go in twice, well, sometimes three times a month to go into that vault um, to do secret stuff.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
Hello, Emily. We haven't seen you in a while.
I know I've been
I
having some
need a
health
break.
problems.
Huh?
Can you hear me?
I
Yeah,
hear
now.
Okay, great.
You say you've been having health problems?
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing okay now?
Yeah, I'm doing better now. Yeah, I had to get some test runs done on
Oh,
me.
I remember you saying that in one of the sessions
Mm.
Yeah,
about your stomach or something like that was happening.
yeah.
Well, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys. And
Got
I
two.
wanted to, oh,
Go,
sorry, I
go
cut
ahead,
you.
Emily. You're fine. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, Erica, last week I saw your message, but it came late, like it came on Friday. So that's why I was like, oh, like that Thursday, I was like, oh, I guess we're not meeting because I didn't hear from anybody. And then I saw your message because it didn't show up till like Friday or Saturday. Like the message you sent me, are we gonna study today?
Yeah, I was actually just asking because I don't know what happened Thursday, or maybe I don't know what made me send it Friday, or maybe I was thinking that was Thursday. Or
Question.
maybe
Hold on. What are we supposed to be studying today? Because you know she's gonna ask us.
we're supposed to be
What?
going over assessments and reviewing those questions she sent in the that I
And
asked her
then
to send in
chat.
Teams. I
Yeah.
went back and looked at the video. I saw that she said she was going to send us
But
a
did
lot
we
of material.
finish?
We
Um,
human development.
we did.
Yep. She went off. You logged off. When you logged off, she kept going, and we got all the way to the end. She
What
touched
time
on
did y'all
the
finish?
8:30 ish.
So yeah, so I logged off probably about 8:10 because I'm always late for my 8 o'clock meeting. I can't be late tonight. But
Kept
so
going
y'all
to the
okay,
Yeah,
end.
that's
Because I went back and watched the video, made some notes. So we got all the way through the definitions. She touched on specific definitions like ego dystonic, systonic, etology, psychopathology, prevalence, EQ, IQ, prognosis. So she even went all the way through touching on some just
okay. I got ego, a
yeah.
little bit of Colbert, Piaget.
Yep. So the last theorist she talked about was Perry.
Okay.
I think at that point you may have.
I've logged
Did
off for
you hear
sure.
when she talked about Bronfenbrenner? Burner?
No.
Okay, she went through him.
So
Then
I
she
just need to watch the video and I started to and life was life. But tonight you said we're doing assessment or research.
I think she said assessments.
Okay.
But she also said we would look over those questions that she dropped in the chat.
there was a lot of questions. I did not get through all
Yeah,
of
I
them
didn't. I
because
figured.
I was like, I either do the questions or watch the video. So I did some of the questions, read, and then watch the video from last week.
So you're talking about the NCE 750 questions?
Uh,
That was the last thing she put in the chat.
Yeah,
no.
and those were for human behavior, human
Well,
development.
NCE 750, isn't that everything? Shoot.
Oh, so they want specific?
Hold on, I'm opening it now.
The one where it's like 161 pages or something like that. Or
I feel
100
like it's the practice exam kit, 615 pages. So it's everything.
Oh, so she just dropped the book. I was asking her, she
Mhm.
said she was specifically going to give us questions about that section.
Let me go back up. Because you said, Dr. Payne, can we have the practice test you mentioned on Tuesday so we can go over in the next session? And she dropped the book.
Yeah.
with
I
the
was talking about the
questions, right?
questions
With the
about
questions, but
human
she had already
development.
dropped it. Then on the 19th.
Sixth exam for the national counseling, like where it has human growth and development is part. That's like kind of the only part I got to is the human
I
development.
wasn't talking about those. When she said she was going to send us some questions to go over,
Mhm.
I understood that it was about that specific section that we were talking about.
No,
I wasn't talking about the book. I have the book.
you had a book too. Do you all use the app? Because I've been looking at, and people are saying the app is really helpful. I don't know.
I used it like a few weeks ago when she first mentioned it,
Mhm.
but I haven't looked at it anymore.
Yeah, I'm in a couple Facebook groups and everyone refers to it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Emma.
I have off and on, but I mostly like try to make flashcards so I can remember like this, because most of it's like kind of like the book, like questions and answers, and like
Mhm.
I want to make sure I have like the nitty gritty stuff, you know.
Yeah,
in
I
there.
like it because it gives it tells why the question is right. The answer is right or
Yeah.
wrong. So then it gives the
Yeah.
definition when you hit more details. And I
Well,
kind of feel it sounds like that's how the questions are kind of going to be on the test.
Test.com does the same thing. It
Mhm.
yeah, and will explain to you like each answer and why it's, and I
Yeah,
like, so we're not just like, oh, okay, this is the answer, but I have no idea why.
right. Exactly. So that's when I get it wrong. It's like, okay, because then I still think it teaches you, different other concepts too, due to the answer choices. But I'm kind of maybe I think like three study groups or three Facebook groups, and people keep referencing that app. And then someone recently said they listened to the last review CD for the Purple Book on their way to the test, and that was helpful.
I bought the Purple Book, but she literally said like
Yeah.
it's not useful, and I was like, man, I like bought all this material before I found her course, and I was like, and she's like, oh, none of it's helpful. I was like, great, I just bought all this for nothing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eric. You were gonna say it so much.
Yeah, I just find it overwhelming.
Don't know what to
even
use.
just from my past testing, I was pulling from like all of these different sources, and it became overwhelming. Sometimes you read something different in different sources.
Oh no.
Because I had the purple book, I had a yellow and black book, I had I think that was I had I had index note cards from some site.
Yeah, I got a box of cards.
Had a green or blue book, maybe both. So I was reading I was going between all of those at one point. And then when she came in on our first meeting and said, this is the only book you're gonna use. I was like, okay, good, one source. And as I began to read that one, I was like, okay, it's helpful. But then she started throwing all the other resources,
other stuff.
which I try to just, keep my focus. Yeah. And I'll look at the index, the note cards or whatever that she'll send every now and then. That first week, I made all of those. But once I began to compare and see, okay, that's the same as what I'm kind of already reading. That was the same, and I just kind of stick to that in the videos at this point. That's kind of really
okay.
I'll look at other few things here and there, but when I be like, oh, okay, nope, that's too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna get overwhelmed. Make my coffee
You
real
guys
quick.
have to log into the new site with the new terms and conditions where you can get in.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, what is this? Is this right?
So I kept trying to, I apologize, I kept trying to bypass it. I'm like, I don't have to agree to the terms and conditions, but it still made me too as well. So I apologize. Dr. Wilson, you have a hot date?
Everybody say that. I went to work
You
today.
look unusually attractive, but not that you don't usually look attractive, but you definitely put some time and some
I went
makeup today.
into my federal job today.
Oh, so you gotta look all
the-
professional.
Yeah, I can't go in with my pajamas on.
So what is your federal job?
I'm a family director for the National Guard Bureau.
Are you former military?
My husband is.
Ah, got it, got it.
So
So
it
have you
was-
traveled a lot, or has it just been so? And you can say none of my business, but that's a very cool job.
No, it's
So-
fine. Well, this is actually our first time moving with him. Now he's always gone. But
Okay.
me and my daughter, only child at the time, never went when he left. And so when he came back from Afghanistan in 18, I had a baby in October. He came back in August. I had the baby, September. We left and came to Maryland in October. So this was our first move with him. And I
Was
hear
it-
we may be moving again.
So was it school or life? What kept you from moving with him prior?
Well, the others were short, like TDYs. They were like maybe a year, 18 months. So I didn't find it necessary to uproot my daughter at that time. And,
Okay, so now
take
you
her-
have two children. Am I
now
understanding?
I have a 14 and a 15. She's about to be 15 and a 5-year-old.
Okay, so the reason was when you had a 14-year-old, moving her every single time wasn't necessary.
And at the time she was much younger. She was
Okay.
Yeah, she just turned 14 last year. So when we moved here, she was actually 10.
Okay.
So prior to that, I didn't see a reason to move and go. Like he went to San Angeles, Texas for like 16 months.
Okay.
I didn't find that necessary. And then all his others have been Iraq. He went to Iraq for 2 years, and then Afghanistan. He stayed there for almost 3 years. But he could come home, do some R&R. So we did get to see him. He wasn't completely in like war zone where we could only, talk by letter or anything like that. But when he first went to Iraq, my daughter was 5 months old. And when he came back, she was 18 months. And so after that, his tours were short. So I was home. I was in Mississippi. That's where my parents were. That's where my village was, my support. Going to San Angeles, Texas was not an option. And no other place was an option at the time. But this time he said, yeah, I need y'all to come with me. And so I had to make a decision to say, okay, I'll support my soldier.
And I asked because I tutor a lot of spouses, male and female, that are trying to get licensed because I guess the military usually finds them a job if possible. So I tutor a lot of people in the military. I've also learned, especially with my social workers, that the military hides a whole lot of stuff.
They have a whole lot of work.
They hide a whole lot of stuff.
Oh,
Things
yeah,
that would
they
get
have.
reported outside the military don't get reported.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. So I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
yeah. That just makes me feel then for the counselors and the social workers that really didn't have to handle things that normally would be handled by an outside source.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, you don't hear about it, but it's there.
Okay. Oh, I hear about it because
Yeah, well, you
I
probably
got to
hear
coach
about
some
it, but,
people now. I know.
Yeah, you probably hear about it, but yeah,
Honestly, it's the things that would be reported to DFACs outside the military do not get reported if you're not. And again, not taking Carl Rogers, non-judgmental. Just saying. I know this.
yeah.
Okay, guys, what are we doing today?
I think you mentioned assessment.
Okay, dokie. Did we open some books on
Being
assessment?
like 2 more sections to go.
Mhm.
Was it research? Is assessment before research?
So assessment is the bigger part. So you just start with assessment. Research has about 6 to 8 questions. And if you're doing like pocket prep and not doing well on the code of ethics question, it's because you're struggling with the research part of it.
Mhm.
Assessments is our biggest piece. So,
Okay, so
did we crack open a book on assessments? Do we know anything about assessments?
No.
Starred?
didn't crack open the book. I was focused on, I always look at the section that we did the Tuesday prior, and I go over that. I don't ever go ahead. So I haven't, to answer the
So
question.
you can say none of my business. So when you married him, he was in the military. So you signed up for this. You knew what you were getting.
He was very well in the military when I married him. Yes, ma'am. As they say, I signed up for it. Yeah.
So I applaud you for being a military wife. So
Yeah.
definitely.
And long distance relationships are hard. I did it for 8 years. Me and my boyfriend just moved in together. He was in the Army.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, why didn't you travel with him?
I was doing graduate school in Los Angeles, and he was training to be an intelligence officer in San Antonio, and he was based, because there's like 6 bases in San Antonio, so he was doing his training here, so we just did long distance.
Very cool. So do we have a wedding date?
Not yet. Well, he was gonna surprise me and get engaged to me next year, but unfortunately he couldn't hold back the surprise, and he told me how he was gonna get engaged to me. And he's like, I just wanted to tell you.
I love that man. I'm so excited to marry you. I can tell you now, I'm gonna marry you.
Yeah, he was like, this is what I'm planning on doing. This is where I'm planning. And he's like, it's supposed to be surprise, so act surprised. I was like, okay.
Now, so again, my therapist hat is on, so you can say none of my business, but you take care of your parents.
I do.
So what's that going to look like?
Well, I live closer now. I live back in San Antonio, so that's definitely helped. And we're actually planning on moving closer to my parents. So that actually helps too. And he's no longer in the military. He got medically discharged. So that kind of, unfortunately, that's not what he wanted, but that's kind of what happened. But it kind of worked out for us in the end.
Very cool. Very cool. The VA is actually the largest employers of MSWs. So that is, and I'm old, and back in the day, they came to my school looking for people, and even now, it's the largest employers of MSWs. And the worse things are, the more they need social workers. So that is something that's, and starting pay is usually about 70. So I have a lot of and if they say they hire you contingent on your license, they mean it. They mean it. So I get a lot of people that are like, if I don't pass, I'll lose my job. So they mean it. They absolutely mean it. Any questions in general that you want me to go over before we start? Okay. So the largest section is assessment, and assessment and research are really just recall. Okay, so this is the time I'm really going to say you just have to know. And it doesn't really matter why. It doesn't matter. So these aren't the ones that I'm going to say to, so tell me what the theorist would say. There's just facts. It's just the way it is. Okay. Am I sharing my screen? Okay. So the biggest thing is to remember between assessment and appraisal. Anybody had their house appraised? They bought a house and they had it appraised? What's the difference between the appraisal and the assessment?
The appraisal is they're looking at things and basically telling you the value.
Absolutely.
Assessment
some
is
sort of judgment.
In the assessment or inspection, they look at things that may need to be done, or you got water leak in the wall or in the roof. They're going into detail about, and it's mainly for the buyer.
Did you sell your house recently? Buy a house recently? You're all up on those terms.
Well, our home we went through it in our home in Mississippi when we thought we were about to sell it, but someone asked to lease it. And then, of course, here in Maryland in 18, when we were purchasing this one, I did get my experience with, because we were searching. And so those were kind of all the things my husband started to educate me on that I could care less about, but now they are very much so important. And I know about them now because I was involved in the process, but that's why.
Okay. So I like these terms because that's what you can use in real life, right? So that's it. So the assessment is like it's not a judgment. These are facts. And then the appraisal includes some judgment. Okay, so usually it talks about human judgment with appraisal. Interpretation. So interpretation talks about then if we are using an assessment tool, interpreting to the client. We don't have the right to not share things with the client. Okay, so we have the right to share with the client has the right to know in a language that they understand. That'd be the same thing as if you went to the doctor's office and he took some blood work and he found out that you had A, B, C, and D. He doesn't have the right to not tell you that. Right? He can tell you that in a language you can understand instead of using those big clinical terms, but you have a right to know. So whenever we use any kind of appraisal or assessment or anything in general, we don't have the right to keep secrets from clients. So when we interpret it, we're going to make sure that we interpret it on language that they understand. Okay. Those terms mean, median, mode, you learned it in 4th grade. Recall what those were? The mean is the average. The median is the number in the exact middle. I always talk about the grass, I mean, in the middle, right on the interstate, you don't want to cross the median. And the mode is the number that appears the most often. So you're going to put them in order, and the mean is how do we get the average?
That we calculate all of them and then divide it by the number that are there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we talk about real estate. Do you really, they always talk about the average home price in this area. Do you really want the average?
If you're selling or buying?
Either way.
You know, because that could be misrepresentative of.
Absolutely, because you know, Davida, you live in the McMansion on the corner up there, that's 5.2 million. Right. And I live over in like my little bitty, one room that's like, 5,000. So if we add those together, that's those skews are throwing off the average. So I really don't want the average. What I really want is the mode. I want to know what most homes sell for in that area. That's really what I'm looking for. So whenever you see that, the mean, and when you see a TV commercial that would blah, this is the average, I don't really want to know that because the average takes in the outliers. And we don't want that. What I want to know is what do most houses in the area sell for? Right? So the goal is really to, yes, understand these for the test, but these are terms that we use all the time. Okay? When someone says the average, like, what I want to know is what do most people buy? What do most people make? We talk about the average income of your area. That's okay. Again, someone over here who makes, $5 million a year and someone over here who makes $325 an hour. I don't want the average, but that is the mean. And when it comes to the testing, the mean guy is the most important. The mean guy is in control. Okay. So when we talk about the bell curve, we talk about the 68, 95, 99 rule. So math, research, assessment has rules. So what does that mean? 68, 95, 99 rule.
I never heard that.
Okay. So what it means is that when it comes to the people in the United States, people in general, there's a rule. The majority of people are going to be in the middle. There we go. That one. So this is the rule. So on any objective tests, any objective rules, the majority of people in the United States, 2/3 of the people of your survey are going to be in the middle. So then, so when you have a 68, 95, 99 rule, that means the mean, median, and mode are the exact same number. Okay. So then what I always say is everybody likes the pink. So 2/3 of your survey, 2/3 of America are going to be in the middle. So if it's 100% of people in the world or 100% people in your study, 2/3 are going to be in the middle. The majority of people like the pink. That's the middle. So then the 95 is the second one. If we're looking at the Hellwig book and we talk about the questions, he uses 96. He's the only one that does. Most often it's 95 on the real test. And the last one is 99. Okay. So what that means is then in a normal distribution, that what we know is if, again, the people in the world, so mean, median, and mode are the middle. So then half the people in the first standard deviation, which is 68%, the pink, half the people will fall below average, half the people will fall above average. And that's 68%, 34 and 34. Okay. If you're in the first standard deviation of the 68%, you're still considered average. Okay. The second one, the 95, comes when I add the 13, 34, 34, 13 all together. That is where the 35 comes from. That is where the 95 comes from. So the pink and the pink, either side of the 68, and then the purple and the purple, that's the 95. And if I have the green, that's where the 99 comes from. Okay. So in any normal distribution, and it'll say as long as the mean, median, and mode are the same number, that's a normal distribution. So for example, we use this with IQ. So average IQ is 100. Okay. The IQ has a standard deviation of 9. When it has a deviation of 9, that means if I score 9 below or 9 above, I'm still in the 68th percentile, which is average. So an IQ score between 91 and 109 would be in the 68th percentile. The majority of people in America have an average IQ, have a normal IQ of 100, and then we give them the error. So 9 below, 9 above. Between 91 and a 109, we're going to say you're above average intelligence. Right? Mean, median, and mode are the same number. That is a normal bell curve. Just facts, just facts. Now the problem comes in is when they're not the same number. So when the mean, median, and mode are not the same number, then I get a skew. Okay, so what does that mean? A skewed distribution. What it means is literally that the mean, median, mode are not the same. So then the skew means that if they're not the same, the mode always goes on top. Ice cream a la mode. The mode sets the top of the curve. The mode is the number that appears most often. So that's going to set my top of the curve. So then the mean guy is the most important. Okay. So let's say I'm a classroom teacher and there are 30 kids in my class and 5 kids scored 50. Okay, that's the mode. That's the number that appears the most often. 5 kids scored a 50. That's the mode. Okay, that sets the top of my peak. In a 68, 95, 99, they're all going to be the same. So that's the top of my peak. But in a skew, this is my 0 point, the mode. The median guy just doesn't give us a lot of stuff. He just kind of floats around no matter where we go. But the mean guy is in charge. The mean guy is the average, and he's in charge. So if again, a classroom teacher, 30 kids in my classroom, five kids score a 50 on the test, but the class average is an 80. So that means the mean is higher. So the mean guy pulls the curve higher, which is going to be to the right. We're assuming that this center point, whether it's on a regular bell curve or a skewed bell curve, is going to be the 0, the middle point. So mode, number that appears most often. Mean is the average. So the mean guy decides which way it goes, which way the tail is skewed. So the same thing. Mode is 50, right? Score in my class was 50, but the average of the class was 30. The mean guy is lower than the mode, so the mean guy then pulls it down. It's left skew because it's lower. We're assuming that this is the middle, right? So this is my 0 points. It'll be -1, -2, -3, and above would be 1, 2, 3. So the mean guy always determines which way we go if the numbers are not the same. Okay. It is just recall. It doesn't matter why. It's not one of those things we have to like, well, because blah, 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 and said, no, 3 times 3 equals 9. It will always equal 9. And this is just one of the rules of math. It just is what it is. Okay. Let me go back and make sure that I'm getting the transcripts on.
So right skewed and left skewed also equal positive and negative skewed?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does. So the left is positive or negative?
The left is negative.
Got it. It's pulling it down.
Right.
And the right is going to pull it up. And the mode decides which way it goes.
The mode decides or the mean
I'm sorry,
decides?
wow, the mean decides. The mode sets the top. Think of
Right.
the ice cream a la mode, your ice cream on top of your cake.
Mhm.
That determines the top. And then the mean determines which way it goes. Okay. The median just kind of hangs out and doesn't give us a whole lot of information. It just kind of goes wherever it wants to go. Okay. The book says the same thing. Okay. So then in my skew, the positive skew means the same thing. The mode, number that appears the most often, sets the curve. And then the mean, if it's higher, it's going to pull it up to the right. If it's lower, it's going to pull it down to the left. Many times they'll give you a number, or they'll say this is the mode is this or the mode is that, but they'll give you enough clues in the question to know what they're asking for. Okay. Another term of variability, that just means difference. Variance or variability just means how we figure out the difference. The range and the inclusive range. I'm only going to use the range when it's a small distribution. It'll say Pam had 5 kids in her classroom. There are 8 kids in Pam's classroom. When I use the range, small distribution, so to get the range, I take the smallest number and subtract it from the largest number. So Pam had 6 kids in her class, and the highest kid scored 50, and the lowest kid scored 30. She's going to subtract the 30 from the 50, and the range of that class is 20. The inclusive range means add 1. Everybody in. So on the test, it's usually pretty simple. It'll say something like the range and the inclusive range. The inclusive range means add 1. So if I see a number that's 43 and 44, the range is 43, and the one you've added 1 to is going to be the inclusive range. You just add 1. Okay, so it is the highest score minus the lowest score and add 1. everybody in. That's not everybody, that's everybody. Right? That's just like everybody. Okay. That standard deviation, that's just that symbol, and you might see that. So we will, if we go back at the bell curve, we'll see that symbol for standard deviation. So the first one is the 68, the second one is the 95, and the third one is the 99. And like I said before, variance just means the difference. Okay. To get the variance, it's simply the square root of the standard deviation. What? I'll show you what that looks like. That's the amount of actual difference. Okay. Let me go back to my bell curve. I like this one a lot better than the one that they use. When I very first started teaching, I would say that you had to memorize this and know all of these. But now there's really, really not a lot of questions. And most often I can say that if you know it very well, you don't need to write it down, but you'll see some of those terms. And I'll put mine in the chat box. This is the one, it's from Wikipedia. I don't feel like I own it, but I just like it much better than the ones that you see on the, in any of the textbooks. I like it so much better. Okay. So what this bell curve tells me is this is the normal standard deviation. So remember the 34 and the 34, the 68. It's 34 below average, 34 above average. If I add the 13, 34, 34, and 13, that is where my 95 is going to come from, the 95th percentile. And the third one goes all the way out from the -3 to the +3. That's for the 99th percentile. You'll see that 0.13 and 0.14, those are my outliers. That's why you don't want the average, because the average includes those outliers, things that don't normally fit in my bell curve. Right? So what you'll need to know is the T and the Z scores. T and Z scores are transformed scores. Raw scores are when you take a test, you get a number, and it gives you this raw score. But I can't compare it to anything unless they've been transformed. When you were in grad school and had to do the SPSS, you had to learn how to transform them into standardized scores. We don't care about it now. We just care that you know that Z and T are changed so I can compare them to each other. So for example, I take a test and my test has 7 questions and I missed 5. I bombed it, didn't I? It's 7 questions and I missed 5. If your test has 150 questions and you miss 5, did you bomb your test? No, right? But I can't compare those 2 scores because it's 2 different tests. So transforming them into standardized scores helps us compare things to each other. And that's the goal of comparing it to each other. So the Z score lines up with the bell curve. So the Z score, the middle is 0. It goes -1, -2, -3, all the way up, 1, 2, 3. So the Z score is the exact same as the bell curve. The T score, T stands for 10. So the T score means the middle, the average, the mean, median, mode is 50. But it goes up and down by 10. Okay, which means that it's never going to have a 0 score. It's important to know that because in a question, they'll ask you which is the highest, which is the lowest. And I have to be able to compare those to each other. So I need to know where they're at on the bell curve. Right? The stay nines, 1 through 9, the stay nines are equally divided between 2 and 8. So 5 is the middle, and 2 and 8, between 2 and 8 are equally divided into, there's 9 sections, but 2 through 8 are equally divided. 1 and 9 include my outliers. So you may have to compare stay-9 score, but most often they're just going to ask if you see it, how are stay-9s divided?
So Dr. Pam, I've seen like in Facebook groups, people say, oh, as soon as I got in, I jotted down the bell curve. Is this what they're talking about?
Yes, but I don't necessarily recommend it anymore because you're not going to get that many questions.
Okay.
But I really did when I first started, and especially if you've seen anything what that taught from me in my own videos, that's exactly what I said.
Okay.
I need you to go in and remember all of this and write it down. I don't do that anymore. You're not going to get that many questions on there, but if you feel comfortable doing that, feel free. Okay. So then what I know between percentages and percentiles, percentages are the percentage, the percentile is the space. Okay. So if I'm standing in line and I am there are 25 people in front of me. Okay. So I know that I'm in the 25 percentage. Okay. I hold that spot. But there are actually 74% of the people below me. So the percentage is the actual percentage. The percentile is the spot you hold. So if I say again, I'm in the 75th percentage, that means there are 25% of people heard me, right? And 74% of the people are below me. Because the spot I hold is the 74th person in the 75th person in line. So the percentile holds a space. I know you're like, what the heck is she talking about? I know. I'll show what it looks like in a question. Okay. So hold on with me. Okay. So that's kind of what I went over. Okay. So the percentile is the value below which a specific percentage follows. So if you're in the 75th percent, your score is higher than 74% of the people because the spot you're holding is number 75. So 74%. So percentage is the number 75. Percentile, I go down 1. So the score is higher than 75% of the people. The stay 9, right? So standard 9, stay 9. So it converts that normal distribution into 9 equal parts. 5 is the middle. 2 through 8 are what I'm looking for, and the 1 and the 9 are the outliers. So the T and the Z scores are standardized scores. So it makes it a common language so we can compare it to each other. So the Z score, like I said, the Z score is the same as the normal bell curve. The Z score is going to be the mean is the middle of 0, and the negative 1, 2, 3, 4 match the bell curve. The T score, T stands for 10. 50 is the mean, the average. It goes up and down by 10. So 10 talks about the normal distribution. There's no negative on a T score. Okay. Okay, let's just take that much and put it into questions, okay? See 101? Which of the following statements about a negatively skewed distribution is accurate? So before I look at any of the choices, if it's a negative skew, what does that mean? What's at the top?
The mode,
The mode is at the top. The mean guy is in charge.
right? And so it's to the left of the mode.
So he's pulled it down to the
Pulled it
left. Okay. So now if I know that, which of these terms are accurate? A, the mean is higher than the mode and the median. B, the median and the mean and the median are equal. C, the mean is lower than the median and the mode. And D, the mean and mode are equal. Remember, the median guy I could care less about. He just kind of goes where everybody else goes. All I really want to know is where the mean guy is in location to the mode.
C,
So if the mode is on top and it's a negative skew, what does that mean?
the mean is lower. So C,
Okay. Do you guys see that? Ask the questions, Erica.
So the state is negative, so negative skew, so the mean is the middle, so the median is
The mode in a skew distribution, the mode is the middle.
to the mode is the middle?
On a skew, a regular distribution, they're all the same. But if all the numbers are not the same, it's called a skewed distribution. So at the top of the skew is going to be the mode, the number that appears the most often. So that's my skew.
So does it matter if it's positive or negative skew?
It does. It does. The mode guy the mode, the mean guy tells me where. I'm gonna put this in your chat box if you want to download it to help you look at it while we're looking at the questions. So that's the skew distribution. Let me give you the normal distribution as well. So that way, if you want to download it while we're looking at the questions, it might help you while we're looking at them. Okay. So the question one is, which of the following statements about a negative skewed distribution is accurate? Okay. So if I go back, and so I know it's a skew, that means mean, median, mode are not the same.
Okay.
Okay. So the skew means it's pulling it to the left or to the right. The mean guy is in charge. In a skew in general, mode is on top. Okay. So now, if it's a negative skew, I know that the mean guy is lower because he's pulling it down. So the mean guy is lower than the mode.
And you say you're not concerned with the what? Median?
Median, nah, he's not important.
That's there. He goes whichever way.
He's like the middle child. He doesn't count.
That's
I just figured that would get somebody's ruffles feathered. You remember things that are feelings related more than you remember other things. Okay. Okay, Emily, make sure we got that. Make sense? Okay. So I know they're not equal. So I took out B and D already. I know they're not equal. So if it's higher, the mean is higher, it's a positive skew because the mean guy is in charge and he's taking it up the number line. If it's negative skew, he's lower and he's pulling it down. Right? Let's look at 102. A class of 9 students completed a midterm exam. The most appropriate measure of the variability of these scores is what? All that means is the difference in these scores. Okay, so variance means difference. The range is when I subtract the lowest number from the highest number. The standard deviation is 68, 95, 99, or first, second, or third. And the central tendency, that just means the middle, the mean, median, and mode. Those are all considered central tendencies. Okay.
So
Emily, what's the answer? Go ahead.
oh, Emily, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
I called you. If you
yeah.
want to answer, I know that Davida wants to, so. Davida, what's my answer to 102?
I would say a variance.
You would not.
Because looking, huh?
You would not.
I would not. Okay, because the most, I'm stuck on the wording of the question. The most appropriate measure of the variability of these scores. So you said
Because it only has 9 students, whenever I have a small distribution, I use the range.
range.
There's only 9 students. So what
Okay.
I'm going to do is subtract then the highest score, like the best student got like 50 and the lowest student got like 30. So that's where I'm going to get that from. So that is going to be then my range.
So question, is there like how we talk about groups, it's like a magic number when you use this type
There
versus
is
this
not, but if you have a class of only 9 students,
type?
that's a small class.
Okay. So
Okay.
you use
So-
range. A larger
Got it.
groups, we use variance.
Got it. Got it. So,
Okay.
so we'll talk more about variance. The variance just means the difference in general. But the key in this question is there are only 9 students.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So that was the key. Okay. Okie dokie. So 106. Okay. Emily, take this one for me. No, okay. In this book, only in this book, he uses 96 instead of 95.
Okay.
Okay, so don't freak out. Okay. In a
Okay.
normal distribution, the percentage of scales between -2 and +2 standard deviation from the mean. What does that mean? It's a 68, 96, 99 bell curve, or 68, 95 bell curve.
Okay.
So having the first standard deviation is a 68. What's the second?
The 96? No.
On this test? Yeah, the 96. Normally it's 90, it's 68, 95, 99.
Okay.
Okay, for some reason, Helwig uses 96, but on the test, that's not what you'll see. You'll see 95. It's a rule. 68,
Okay.
95, 99 rule. The first standard deviation, okay, so we go back to that, that's where that comes from. So the first standard deviation, that's the first one, the 68, right? So it's 1 below average, 1 above average. The 95 then takes us into 2 standard deviations, that sign, 2 standard deviations below average, 2 above average.
Okay.
And the third one of the 99 takes it 3 below the average and 3 above the average. So that's where that comes from, the 68, 95, 99 rule. If when we use the Helwig book, he always says 96. I don't know where he got that from, but just know that's on the rule in this book. So 68, 95, 99 is a rule. Okay.
So he said 95.
He said 96. He says 96.
You talking about the book you gave us?
That's how it works. Unless this one, so A is 96.
Yeah, he says 68, 95, and 99.
That's probably, oh, I'm probably using the, yeah, I am. I'm using the older edition, the 20, the newer one he uses the correct number. You're absolutely right. I'm using the older edition. Okay. I talked about this one. So z-scores and t-scores, right? Z-scores and t-scores are raw scores. If I miss 5 on my 7 and you miss 5 on your 150, can we compare those together? Okay. So then 107, z-scores and t-scores make it possible to compare the results of several different tests taken by one individual. These scores are example of what? Deviation, raw scores, normal scores, standard scores. Navita?
These standard scores?
Exactly. And the key and the question is because I want to compare them. Raw scores are where they come from, but when they're transformed to Z and T scores, that's how I'm able to then compare them to the two. Or compare them to each other.
And just so I know, again, what was the answer? You said standard score, correct?
Yeah, they're standard or standardized. That's how I'm able to compare them to each other. We convert them from raw scores to standardized scores. Okay. Okay. So
This portion of the test is important to psychometrists.
well, big old fancy word. This important to this part of the test is important to you because you want the license. Psychometrists are people who only administer tests, right? They administer and test. A psychometrist wouldn't necessarily interpret the test, though. They would like to give it back to you and then tell you to interpret. Okay.
I guess this will be important.
Okay, correlation coefficient. So correlation is the relationship, coefficient is the number. Okay, so this is not cause and effect. This is just the relationship, how two things are related. Okay, I always talk about Maury Povich, Jerry Springer, somebody who says it's a 99.9% chance you're the baby daddy. I took the baby's DNA and the daddy's DNA and they matched. Okay. Perfect correlation is 100, whether it's positive or negative. That's perfect correlation. Okay. So what that means though, so the coefficient is the number. Coefficient just means number. Correlation means they're related. Okay. So we use this all the time. So if we look at the price of groceries right now, and if I'm measuring the price of groceries and the stress in American families, if the price of groceries keeps going up and the stress keeps going up, that's a positive correlation, right? They're going in the same direction. If the price of groceries goes down and stress goes down, that's still a positive correlation. They're going in the same direction. If the price of groceries goes down and family stress keeps going up, that's a negative correlation. Okay. I don't care if it's a positive or a negative. What I care about is that they go with the same rate. So 1.0 or move it over 100% is perfect correlation. Groceries went down, stress went up. Stress went down, groceries went down. Either way, it doesn't matter. Negative or positive, as long as they go at the same rate, that gives me that perfect correlation. Right? So the lowest correlation I will take is 0.70. So think about a test, right? If 100 is passing, right? The lowest your professor is going to take is a 70. Right? So anything below it with a negative or positive, anything below a 70, I'm not going to accept. So when it comes to correlation, it's not cause and effect. It's how these two things are related. I don't care if it's negative or positive. All that matters, that's how they're related. That is correlation. The correlation coefficient is the number.
You said the lowest correlation is you said 7.0 or 0.7?
Okay, so it's either 70, if it's 100, you move the decimal point over. So if 1.0 is the same as 100,
Mhm.
there's going to be a 0.70 or 70.
Okay.
Those numbers are the same. It just depends on where we put the decimal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And put up some questions. Try to open another question. Let's look at that. Okay. Yeah, switch screens point. Okay. Okay, so do you see number 1?
Yes.
Okay. So a correlation coefficient that is not possible is what? So if 100 is perfect, I can't get any better than perfect correlation, 99.9%, you're the baby daddy. Which one of these is not possible?
4,
Why?
because you can't get higher than 1.0.
Absolutely, you can't get better than perfect. 0 means ain't no way, no how you're the baby daddy. Right? That's, yeah, I knew what mean. You walk off the stage. Yes, yes. Right? Girls crying. Come on, you had COVID. There was daytime TV on. You had nothing else to watch. Okay. Negative 6.0. Will I accept that? It's too low. It has to be at least a 0.70. That is not an acceptable correlation. So the one that's not possible is anything above 100 or 1.0. It's just not possible. You can't get better than perfect.
So why did you say negative 6 Is that 6 point? It's a lot of
It's
decimals.
not acceptable. It's
Acceptable,
possible,
gotcha.
but not acceptable,
Okay.
right? Because what is acceptable correlation?
Mm.
What does it have to be for me to
Point
accept it?
7.
Absolutely.
Huh?
So that's too low for me to accept it.
Okay. But there's
Okay.
a difference, right? The key word is acceptable versus not possible.
Exactly. So
Okay.
1.26 is not possible. That is just too low. We're not taking that. Okay. Number 6. Okay. So the correlation coefficient is sometimes also called the R value. Right? So the R value is perfect correlation. So the question says the closer the R value gets to 1, what happens? 1, the weaker the association. 2, the stronger the association. 3, the inverse association. Or 4 has nothing to do with the association. So my relationship, my correlation, the closer it gets to 1, what does that mean?
The stronger?
Absolutely. Right? So that is just the R value is just a big old fancy term for my correlation. The closer it gets to 1, positive or negative, the closer these two things are related to each other.
Because those are perfect numbers. One for
Absolutely. Absolutely.
tracking.
Okay. Look at 15. Emily, try this one.
Okay, the highest degree of correlation is shown by negative 0.70, 2 is 0, 3 is negative 0.30, and 4 is 0.80.
So which of those is the highest degree of correlation? Which is closest to 100?
So 80?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. If it were a negative 80, it'd be okay too. Okay. So it doesn't matter if the correlation is negative or positive. The closer it gets to 1.0 or 100, the closer the relationship. $16. Erica, try that one.
The most frequent case is the mode, median, mean, standard deviation.
The most frequent case means which one do I see the most often? How do I get the mean? What is that one? That's the average. Those are the sell price in the house, right? Add up all the numbers, I divide by the number they have. That's the average.
So the most frequent. I'm gonna eliminate 2.
Got it. And we took out 3. So between 1 and 4. All it's asking me is which number would appear the most often.
4.
That's the mode. Okay. The numbers of central tendency are median, mean, median, and mode. So the mean is the average. We add up all 5 numbers, divide by whatever, right? The median, the green grass, the number in the middle, And that mode is a number that appears most often. Okay, so that's another way of asking the same question.
I was trying to associate this thing.
Okay, I swear you'll get it. Watch this video 17 times. You will get it. It's really, so most people are anxious coming in because they see these words and they go into like this brain freeze. And that because we all were traumatized by some teacher in school that made us learn this stuff, and we're all freaking out. And it's really, really not as hard as they made it seem. It's not, I promise you it's not. We call these the freebies. That's why we lay them for last, because it's just a matter of recall. And I say you learned it in 4th grade and it hasn't changed. And it won't change 20 years, 30 years, 100 years from now. It'll still be the same. Right? Just memorization on these. Okay. 32. Try this one, Davida.
In a normal distribution, the percentage of all cases within 2 standard deviations of the mean is 1 68%, 2 34%, 3 99%, and 4 95%. So the answer would be 4.
Absolutely. 68, 95, 99. It's a rule. 68% is the first, 95 is the second, 99 is the third. Okay. It's a rule. Can't break the rules in math. Okay. 44. You see that one, Emily?
The median score of a set of scores is the average of all the scores. The point on the score scale that has the highest frequency, the point on the score scale below which half the cases fall are equal or 4 equal to the mean.
So all it's asking me is, what is the median? The green grass. Cross the median and a head-on car collision, you'll die.
I was gonna say equal to the mean, but I don't think it's
That's not true. No, that's not it. So the median is the number in the exact middle. So we know it's not 1 or 4, now between 2 and 3.
I'm gonna go with 2, the point of the score scale that has the highest frequency. No.
Nope, that's the mode.
The mode.
The mode is the number that appears the most often.
So it's 3, the point of the score scale below which half the cases fall.
Absolutely. So if it's in the middle, half are below, half are above.
I remembered you saying that. That's why I kept going back between 2 and 3.
Okay. So 2 is the mode. So that was kind of the question she had before, which appears the most often, right? Frequency is the one that most often, that's the mode.
Okay.
But that median is the exact middle. So half have to be below and half have to be above.
Okay.
Okay. $47. Erica?
Select the range of possible values of a correlation coefficient. +2 to -2, 0 to 10, 0 to +1, -1 to +1. 4.
Absolutely, absolutely. Perfect correlation is negative to positive 1. This has nothing to do with the bell curve though, right? These are two separate things. Just know that perfect correlation is going to be either a positive 1 or a negative 1. Perfect. There you go. Go. Okay, okay. Let's go back to our text then. Okay. So we've covered up into point 8. Okay, to make sure we go back, right? So we've talked about the term, like the terms, measurement, assessment, appraisal. We talked about mean, median, and mode, what those mean. You know what a skew is, right? If it's the mode is on top, if it doesn't, if it's not if all the numbers are not the same. The range, right? Small group of number, highest from the lowest. Inclusive range means we add 1. The standard deviation talks about the first, second, or third standard deviation. The bell curve, where I get my 68, 95, 99, the rules, right? This is the file I'll give you. I think I put in the chat box, the one that I like. This is the one, the book, I like mine better. I just did. Okay, it's Wikipedia, it's not mine. Okay.
Hold on, Dr. Pan, I just had a clarification for standard deviation. So standard deviation is associated directly with the bell curve?
Absolutely.
Is that how to remember it? Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's that 60, the rule.
Yeah, the rule.
Okay.
Got it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Okay. T and Z scores are transformed to be able to be able to compare to each other. Okay. Okay. Correlation coefficient. That's the number. Okay. I'm going to skip reliability and go to validity first, because validity is the most important. Okay. So validity means, does it do what it says it's going to do? All right. So, have you told my story about how I got COVID in my bed? Traveled the whole wide world with COVID. I swear, it was great. It was so great. Every country wore masks except America. It was great. It was so great. In Aruba, I was in Belize. It was amazing. Okay. And most of the countries were very, very strict. In Belize, if you didn't wear a mask, it was a $500 US dollars. And that's 1,000 Belizean dollars. Exactly. So the rules were strict. Oh my gosh. In Aruba, we had to have like the test, and we flew in, and they didn't have the right thing, and they made us test again. You had to like stay in your room. I mean, it was the rest of the country, the rest of the world was so serious. It was great. Fought COVID in my own damn bed. I know. That teach me to let some man in my bed, won't it? So what happened was, and actually I had come back from a cruise. I'd just come back from a cruise, and I really thought I was immune to COVID. I did. I traveled the world. I was in Disney in the middle of COVID. It was great. There was 3 people there. It was so cool. I didn't put on Facebook because, I'd been in trouble because I should have been working from home, but I was working from different countries. Anyway, so what happened is I came back and I just taken a test when I got off the cruise. That's why I make sure I didn't get off the cruise. And my friend was sick. And I said, take a COVID test. And he didn't take a COVID test. So he took a COVID test and it was negative. And he's still sick. And I'm like, I don't believe you. Take the COVID test in front of me. So brings the COVID test over. He takes it in front of me and it's so negative. Okay. Got to be valid, right? It's negative. A couple of days later, I turn out positive for COVID. Because the tests he was using were outdated. They were expired. So we could have used that batch 1,000 times. It was reliable over and over and over again. It was said he was negative. So validity is the most important thing. Had we used a valid test, I would not have gotten COVID. Right? So validity is the most important thing. When you take a pregnancy test, don't you want that to be right? Okay, that is valid. So there are many types of validity. Okay, so validity, face validity means that anybody anywhere can tell you what's the test. If you get to the test and it says, welcome to the realtor exam, are you going to open that test and take it? No, right? They're like, this is not my test. So face validity is just by looking at it. Right? Content validity is, does it measure the content that you're supposed to be taking? It's usually subject-based, math, science, whatever. Okay. If you get to the test and you get there and it says, welcome to the NBCC test or NCE test, and it says, you know, these are your domains, and it talks about like art history, are you going to keep taking that test? Because it's not valid for content. What you study should be on the test. That's content validity. It's drawn from the content you should have learned. Okay, that's simply, does it measure what it's supposed to measure? What the domains on the test, does it measure? What I hear a lot of times, people that use the purple book the first time and they'll come back and they're like, nothing I studied was on that test. Okay, which is not true. It just doesn't look the way that you wanted it to look. Okay, but that's content validity. Okay, so then predictive looks at whether the test can predict behavior. So then in order to get to grad school or even undergrad school, you had to take an ACT or a GRE or an SAT. Those are supposed to be predictive tests. The thought behind them is if you do well on the ACT or the SAT, you'll do well in college. So those are predictive tests. Okay. We can talk about the ASVAB, right? That's a test that looks for validity. I'm sorry, it looks for potential, right? It's measuring your potential for the military. It's predictive. If you score high on the ASVAB, the assumption is you'll do well in the military. Is the NCE a predictive test? If you do well on the NCE, does that make you a good counselor? No. Okay, so it is not a predictive test. All it means is you're a good test taker if you pass it the first time.
But wait, is it considered a predictive test?
No, it's not. No, it's
Oh.
not. There's no correlation between passing the NCE and being a good counselor. None at all. All
So
it means is you're a good test taker.
Wasn't that for all the tests though, like SAT and GRE? That's why I'm confused.
Well, yeah, supposedly, but that's how colleges decide, right? They look at your SAT, your ACTs, as well as your test, as well as your GPA.
Okay.
Okay. And we know when it comes to scholarships, right? The higher your SAT or ACT, they give you more money because those are supposedly predictive of how well you'll do in school.
Okay.
Okay. But when it comes to the licensure exams, those are not necessarily predictive of how well you'll do.
They're considered content then.
They are just considered, we'll talk about, they're considered, what are they called? It's one of the things we'll see, it's an achievement test. Okay. I've achieved this knowledge. That's what I'm looking for. It's an achievement test, but it's not a predictive test. Okay. So the NCE is not. Okay. Concurrent means that I have got two tests and I'm trying to maybe introduce a new one. And I'm looking at these tests at the same time to see, do they match? The results of the test are compared with the other test results or behaviors at the same time. Okay, so the SAT and the ACT are concurrent tests. The assumption is if you do well on one, is you'll do well on the other. That's why some schools take the ACT or the SAT, and it doesn't matter which one that you use. So concurrent validity means I've taken these two tests at the same time and they both measure the same thing. Think of concurrent at the same time. Okay. That term construct validity is difficult because the term constructs are difficult to measure. So to remember way back when we first started, I talked about a construct. Do you remember what that was? Davida, you're like, maybe.
No, it's just what we create constructs, things that we create in our mind.
Got it. Things we can't touch, right? Happiness, sadness, things like that. So if I'm creating a test to measure happiness, that's a construct. Okay. So we can talk about people, and I always say on TV, right? We see the kids in India who are playing in the dirt and picking things out of the trash can to eat. And the narrator will say, but they're so happy. Would that be happiness in the US? Not at all. So those are constructs, right? Things our society that has come up with. So those are happiness, sadness, contentment. So whenever I'm using I'm looking to measure construct validity, the terms I'm going to look for are going to be either they come together or they don't. Okay. So construct, a test has construct validity to the extent it measures some hypothetical thing. Anxiety, creativity, right? So validity is, does this test actual measure happiness? Does the Beck's depression scale actually measure depression? Those are constructs, right? In some societies, there's not even a word for depression. If I was a kid and told my mother I didn't want to get out of bed because I was depressed, that was not a word in my house when I was a little kid. That was, nope. Okay, that was not a term. Okay, so those are constructs. When it comes to construct validity, I will say again, it's just a matter of memorization. Either it comes together or it doesn't. So if you remember that Robert Frost poem, right? Two roads converged, came together. I took the one less traveled by. It came apart. So convergent and discriminant, just memorization, belongs to construct validity. Does this test measure happiness or not? Does this test measure sadness or not? Those are constructs. If we go back to Mark Savickas, he said that in careers, choosing a career was a construct, right? We've got stuff because your mom and daddy, mom has been a doctor, lawyer, and you're supposed to do it just because they've done it. He said taking the SDS and all those tests, that's just some made up stuff. Okay, so construct validity has the terms convergent or discriminant. Whenever I see those terms, I know it belongs to construct validity. Is this test valid to measure that hypothetical thing? Does this test measure happiness in my population? Okay. Converge, discriminant. Come together or they don't. Okay. A test may be reliable, but not valid. Okay. So that COVID test was reliable, wasn't it? You could have taken that same batch 17 times. It still came out negative, but was it right? So validity is the most important thing. Did it do what it's supposed to do? I'll talk about when you do pocket prep and you keep doing it over and over and over again, and you say, now I'm getting in the 80th percentile. Is that valid? It's not, right? Because you've done it over and over and over again. It's reliable, but it's not valid. A valid test means I haven't not seen it before. I'm going to learn new information. I take the test. That's valid. So reliability is consistency, but it doesn't matter if it's wrong. So validity is the most important thing. So 16 tests are power tests or speed tests. believe it or not, the NCE is considered a power test. They say you have enough time, but power tests are written that you have enough time, but they're written so that you'll never get a perfect score. That's a power test. Okay. Power tests, no time limits, are very generous, and they say the NCE and the CPC are power tests. But you'll never get a perfect score. It's written that you'll never, even if we take out the ones that don't count, it's still not possible to get a perfect score. It's written that way. I didn't write the test. I'm just telling you the rules. Okay. Don't be making your brows at me. I did not write it. A speed test is accuracy. Okay. Anybody old enough to remember typing in high school? Absolutely. That's a speed test. If you could type 55 words a minute or whatever it was, that's a speed test. We still have those. Like, so there's an Amazon plant where I live, and Amazon does a speed test, right? Before you hire, can you put the things, the widgets in the widget hole? Can you find the things? Those are speed tests. They're timed and based on accuracy during that time frame. So the NCE is a power test, not a speed test. Remember when you were in high school and you had to be able to run the mile in a certain amount of time? That's a speed test. And the goal is you increase your speed till you pass the speed, you get where you need to be. Got it. So assessments are norm reference or criterion reference. Norm means I'm comparing it to other people. So if you take the NBCC, the one that you don't get your test results right away, that is a norm test. It is normed, it's a nationally normed test. What that means is can't tell me whether I pass or fail on that one because we're waiting for the average of the other states to come in. That's a nationally normed test. The NCE is locally normed. That means your state sets the criteria, and that's the one where you get your answer right away, pass or fail, because it's based on the local or the state average. So normed reference means I'm comparing you to either people in your city, people in your zip code, people in your state, people in the nation, etc. That's norm. The norm is the average. We talk about in groups, right? Norming is when we set the rules, right? This is how we behave in group. That's the norm. Criterion-based is a score. You have to have a 55. You have to have a 23 on your ACT. You have to have a 97 on your test. There's a cutoff score. There's a criteria that says that you have to get this number to join the military. You have to get this number to say that you pass. So the criterion is a number. Okay. Normed reference just means I'm waiting for the average of everybody else. Okay. You'll see a question that talks about ipsatively. Ipsatively means I don't really care what the norm is. I only care that I get better. I'm only measuring it toward me. Ipsatively. Okay. I am 5'9", and I am 58 years old. I'll be 58 in, 21 days. Okay. So there is a local norm. There's a state norm. There's probably more local norm. A local norm of what I should weigh. I live in the South, so the local norm is a lot higher than the national norm. We'll put that out there, okay? Because we little chubbier in the South. Okay. So that's the local norm. The national norm looks at all across people in the United States that are 5'8" and says this is the age, the weight range you should be in. Okay. I don't care about either. All I care about is ipsatively. Do I weigh more or less than I weighed yesterday? I'm not comparing it to anybody else, just to me. So if someone is doing a test, and many of that times that question will say, their students are very low functioning and they don't want their students to be compared to the national or the state level, they'll just compare them to their previous test. If simply means I'm just comparing it to me. Did I do better on this test than I did last time? Do I weigh more today or less than yesterday? I don't care what the norm says. I don't care what the rule says. I only care about me personally. That's the I, ipsatively. Okay. For example, looking at an individual's highs and lows on an aptitude battery, which measures several aptitudes. I'm not comparing it to anybody else. Okay. Another example of ipsative is when individual scores a second test compared to the score on the first test. But I'm not comparing it to anybody else, just what I scored. Okay. That term maximal performance and typical performance. So then when you take your NCE, I always say to you, I need you to be at your best. Mind, body, and soul, right? I need you to have slept. I need you to get your anxiety out of the way. I need you to be at your very, very best. I need your best performance that day. The Super Bowl, right? They want you to be at your maximal performance. Your typical performance is, it's just another test. Okay. So maximal means I need you to be at your very, very best. Give me all you got. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Typical is just what you would do every day. Okay. Let me go back and pick up reliability. So validity is, does it measure what it's supposed to measure? Does it do what it's supposed to do? We talk about then the importance of it being valid, because that's the most important. Reliability says over and over and over again, will it do what it's supposed to do? Okay. So reliability is then consistency. If you take the NCE, if you take it the first time and you do nothing different or said the exact same way the second time, you're going to get the exact same score. The test may be different, but you're going to score in the same range because you didn't do anything different. The test is valid and it's reliable. So if you scored low in helping relations the first time and you don't study anything different, you go back and do the exact same thing you did the first time, you're going to get the same score. Maybe a different test, but it's reliable. Okay. So then when it comes to reliability, there's a couple of things that we're looking for. So the term test retest, so reliability using the same instrument on both occasions. Okay, so I took the same test, got the same score. If I didn't do anything different, the test is reliable. Okay, the length of timing may influence that, but the average score is 2 weeks. Okay. So again, if you during a practice test, you did all the pocket prep, 50 questions, and you come back and the second time and 2 weeks later, you do the same 50 and you miss the same thing, you didn't learn anything because the test is reliable. Equivalence is the alternative forms. So there are like 17,000 versions of the NCE, right? Oh my God, you got the easy test. You got the hard test. No. They measure the exact same domains, the exact same content. Whether you got form AC 2379 or whatever, it's the same content. So that means alternative tests are given. So back in the day, way back when we had like pencil and paper tests, the teachers would give the A form and the B form, right? So you couldn't copy off the person next to you. That's all that means. So sometimes it's called parallel forms. Same test, same thing, just measure the same thing, just like in different order or written differently, but they still measure the same. So no matter what version of the test you get, it's going to be the same. It's going to measure the same domains. This is called split half reliability, or sometimes it's called the Spearman-Brown. Okay. All that means if I took a test and split in half, if I took the first half or the second half, I would get the same. So something like multiplication tables. Remember way back when in school, a million years ago, learning multiplication tables? So we had these things called textbooks back then. I know everybody has an ebook and like an e-reader, but back then we had textbooks. And the teacher would, if you're doing the multiplication tables, sometimes the answer is to like the evens or the odds that are in the back of the book. So she would say, do the evens or the odds, or the first 50 or the second 50. If they're all measuring multiplication tables, it wouldn't matter which I did because they're all measuring the same thing. Okay. What that looks like in the NCE, if you're doing the home test, or I've had a couple people that actually can do it in 2 days, what happens is you could take the first 100, right? The home especially, take the first 100. Well, ask you 5, 6, 7 times. Are you sure you're done? Are you sure you're done? Are you sure you're done? You submit that first 100 and you can't go back to it. Okay. You come back and you take the second 100. It doesn't matter because I don't know which is the first 100, which is the first, second 100. It's split, so it doesn't matter what it is. So I don't know where I measure, I don't know which questions to measure what. It's not split by subject area. But if you did the first 100 today and the second 100 tomorrow, you still get, that's the same thing because I just split the test in half.
But Dr. Pam, so is it saying it reduces the reliability? Is that what this is saying?
No, it doesn't at all. It makes it, so if I split it in half, I'm still should get the same score.
Okay.
That's a form of reliability. So sometimes called the Spearman-Brown, or sometimes called the Spearman-Brown prophecy. All it means, if I test it, if I split it in half and it measures the same thing, it wouldn't matter. It's still going to be valid and reliable. Right? Internal consistency. And whenever I think about internal, and we'll talk more about this under the research area as opposed to assessment. Internal consistency means the inside of the test is supposed to measure what it measures. Okay, so the more homogeneous the item, the more reliable the test. Okay, so in these terms, I don't usually teach these terms because they're, I don't usually think them. I don't really, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, you're not going to see these most often. Okay. So if it does, the more homogeneous the items, the more reliable the test. So if I am using yes, no, or true, false questions, those are more reliable if they're all the same, more homogeneous. Okay. If a task contains non-dichotomous, which means they're not the same, such as multiple choice or essay, then I'll use a Cronbach output. I wouldn't waste those time knowing either one of those terms. Just know the more homogeneous the test, if it's all multiple choice or if it's all essay, the more likely it is to be reliable. If it's a couple of essay, a couple of true false, a couple of fill in the blank, that's less reliable. Okay, so the reason that the NCE is multiple guess, multiple choice, right? So they're all the same, so that means it's more reliable. The more homogeneous the items, the more reliable the test. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about this one. This is the true and the error variance. Okay. So the way that you get this, so what I talked about before, variance is the difference. I didn't even put my whiteboard. Actually, I'm going to go here and stop sharing. Oh, Okay. Okay, so do you see me like trying to draw?
Yeah.
So, okay, so what this question talks about, it really looks at the true error and the difference in error. Okay, so I said to you before that perfect correlation is 100, right? That's 1.0 or perfect correlation. So what I know is when I have two items, I'm looking at that relationship between the two items. So if it tells me that I've got two items and I'm looking at the relationship between the two, it'll say that this test has a variability or a variance of 0.40. Okay. So what that means is the amount that the amount that they have in common. So if it tells me that the amount they have in common is 4.0, is that enough for me to accept these two things? Right, it is in 0.70, right? Okay, but it does, this test is not asking me that, but it'll give me that number. So what it's going to ask me then is, so what is the amount that these two things have in common? To get the amount they have in common, which is called the true error, I'm going to multiply it. So 4 times 4 is what?
16.
Got it.
No, yeah, right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so that's the amount they have in common, which is then sometimes called the coefficient of determination, or sometimes called the true error. Okay. So then, if that's the amount they have in common, it'll also ask me then what is the real error, which is the amount they don't have in common. So if I know that 100 is perfect correlation, and the amount they have in common is only 16, my error of the error of variance is going to be 100 minus 16. That is 84. So 84 is the amount of, sometimes it's called non-determination, or sometimes it's called the error variance. That's the amount they don't have in common. Okay, so they'll give you the number. They'll say that this test has a variance of 60. To get the amount they have in common, I'm going to do 60 times 60, or 6 times 6, which would be 36. And then to get the amount they don't have in common, I subtract it from 100. I know. Okay.
So would they ask you the true variance or the error variance, or either or?
Either or. So the true variance is the amount they actually have in common. It's also called then the coefficient of determination. That is, how much do they actually have in common? The other part then is going to be called, you see my screen?
Error.
Okay, so I've got this test, right? It's looking for the true error and the error variance. So then what I'm looking for is the relationship between these two tests. I know the correlation, perfect correlation is 100, right? So it'll give me a number. So if the correlation between the two tests is 0.90, so if I can tell you how much they have in common, it's 0.90 or 90 squared. 9 times 9 is 81. That gives me the amount they have in common, which is called the true error or the coefficient of non-determination. Both of those things mean the exact same thing. What number tells me how much they have in common. The error variance is then the amount they don't have in common, or the non-determination. This did not determine how much they have in common. So if the perfect is 100 and it tells me the amount they have in common is 90, then I'm going to take 9 times 9. That tells me 81.81, or 81% is the amount they have in common. And if perfect is 100, then I'm going to subtract 81 from 100. And that tells me that they have 19% not in common. So if the true variance or the coefficient of determination is 0.90, do I like that test? I do. I sure do, because I'll take nothing below a 7.0. So this means it's a really good test. And the amount they have in the amount of error is going to be 19%. So coefficient of determination, I square the number they give me. The non-determination, after I square the number, I subtract it from 100. I know. Just facts. Okay. Did we talk about how to get IQ? MA over CA times 100. You ever seen that one? Okay. You might see that. So IQ is your mental age over your chronological age times 100. Just a fact. That is not using any IQ test. That is just one of those things that we know. MA over CA times 100 is how we get intelligence. This is how you get what they have in common. This is how you get what they don't have in common.
Can you break that down again? Mental age over what?
I'll show you.
Okay.
So this is just one of the things that we do. MA over CA times 100. Here we go. So your mental age over your chronological age times 100. Okay. So again, this is not like brain surgery, right? So if your mental age, so let's say that your mental age reading on the 12th grade level, and your chronological age is you're only 6. What does that tell me? You're smart as heck, right? If you're 6 and your mental age is way higher than that, I don't need to multiply that times 100. I can just tell you that kid is really smart. So that's all it means. MA over CE times 100 is a formula that we use. You don't have to ever figure out that formula. We don't really use it anymore, but that's how we used to determine IQ. MA over CA times 100. That's just a formula. So when it comes to the same thing with how we figure out the correlation coefficient and the how much they have in common, it's just a fact. Okay. So MA over CA times 100, just a fact.
And you said this might be on the test.
It's yes. Okay. Okay, hang on. I swear, we've almost finished this chapter. It's really not that bad. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. Okay, so let me go back and look at then.
When you're done, Dr. Pam, I wanted to ask a quick question just so I make things clear in my brain.
Go ahead and ask me now.
The coefficient of determination, you said you square it or you times it to get like,
so you square it. So
Okay.
what I say though is take that number and multiply it by itself, because some people forget how we square. So right, so square it means if it's 8, it's 8 times 8.
Okay.
So if you multiply, it's the same thing. So multiply it by itself is where we get that's where the number comes from. 8 times 8, so it's 8 squared.
Got it. Okay. I'm following now. Thank you.
Okay. It's quite, so I say it either way because when I say squared, we learned that in like 4th or 5th grade. Like, what? What do you mean squared? Okay, so it just means 8 times 8. Okay. So now another formula is my SEM. Okay, so my SEM is my standard error measurement. The SEM you see all of the time. So when the election returns come out, at the bottom of the screen, it'll say negative or positive 0.260 SEM. All that means is the possible error of measurements when I did that research or when I got those polls back. Okay, it's again another formula. Okay, so then what I know, they're always going to give you what it looks like in the question. They're going to give you the SEM. I'll give you my whiteboard again. Okay, so the standard error measurement is the SEM. They're always going to give you the information. This is not a guessing test, okay? They're always going to give you what you need. So all that means is what is the possible error of measurement when I get my research, okay? So what it's going to tell you, it's going to say that Pam scored a It's going to say Pam scored an 80 on the test. Oh, wow, that's just pretty neat. Oh, that's cool as crap. Sorry. It doesn't take much for me to be thrilled. Okay, so oh, come on, I just need that. I don't want to text. Am I still sharing? Yes, no, maybe?
No, you're not.
Okay, okay. Okay. Am I sharing now?
Yes.
Okay. So it'll tell me, it'll say that Pam scored an 80 on the test. It'll give me the numbers. And it'll say with a SEM of 4, 6, whatever, it doesn't matter. It'll give me that number, the standard error of measurement. Okay. So it'll ask me then, what was the error of measurement at 2/3 or the 68th percentile? Okay. So then when they give me this number, what I know is that the first standard deviation, which is 2/3 or 68%, I add and subtract the 6 from the 80. So at the first standard deviation, it's going to be 74 to 86. I know that because they told me this is my score and the error of measurement is 6. Okay, they told me that. That's how I know. Okay, so at the 68th percentile, I add and subtract the 6. At the 95th percentile, I'm going to double the 6. So now I'm going to add and subtract 12 from the number they gave me. Like, I don't know what 80 minus 12 is. I swear I don't. Alexa, what's 80 minus 12?
80 minus 12 is 68. Just so you know, you can also ask me questions in your car. Would you like to learn more?
No, Alexa. Okay, so the 95th percentile, the second standard deviation, it's 68. And then I'm going to add 12 to the 80. So that's going to be 92. So if it asks me what the SCM is at the 99th percentile, what do I do?
It's still double six.
So if I doubled it, if I singled it at the 95th, at 68, and I doubled it at the 95th, what do I do with the third one?
Triple it? Oh, because it's three
Absolutely.
standard.
Yes, absolutely. Alexa,
18.
what is 80 minus 18?
80 minus 18 is 62.
Alexa, what is 80 plus 18?
80 plus 80 is 160.
No, Alexa, what's 80 plus 16?
80 plus 16 is 96.
Okay. SCM is a rule, standard error measurement. It's going to give me the numbers. All it's going to ask me is, where am I at? 68, or sometimes we'll say 2/3, 95th, or 99. So I'm looking for the error measurement of human error in the polls or in research. Okay. So literally, whenever you see the lecture terms at the bottom, it'll say plus or minus an SCM of, it'll give you a number. That just means the possible error of human error in that. So the first standard deviation, or you'll see 2/3, is going to be that add and subtract. The second one, right, is going to be then double that number, and the third one is triple the number. Don't be scared. I swear to you, it is not that hard. It is just memorization. These are the easy ones. Just the facts. Okay. If I go back to the book and what it says in the book, the same thing, right? So if a person scores a 92 on a test and the SCM is 5, the chances are 2 and 3. So the 67, that's the 68th percentile, means that I'm going to take that 5 and add it to the 92 and subtract it from the 92. At the 68, or 2/3. Okay, the same thing. So if it's the 95th percentile, then I'm going to take that 5 and double it. So now it's 10 minus 92 and 10 plus 92. That is the 82 to 102. And if I see the 99th percentile, all I'm going to do is then keep adding. So now it's going to be 15 minus 92 and 15 plus 92. Okay. Okay, let's put that to some questions.
I have to jump off and go to my next meeting. Sorry. This is
Quite all right.
getting good. All right.
So when you're doing the research and assessment, remember, you'll probably get some of those things that are really about the code of ethics. When you're so when doing code of ethics on Pocket Prep, you'll get those. Okay. So then the ink blot is what kind of test? Who does the ink blot belong to? Am I sharing?
You are sharing.
Okay. Who does it belong to? It's Freud. Unconscious, right? That's the ink blot. Okay. So then the ink blot is standardized, projective, cognitive, or power.
Cognitive.
Not an IQ test. Freud
Projective.
said, look at this picture and tell me what you see. So you're projecting from your
Okay.
unconscious onto the picture, right? And no matter what you said, you were wrong.
Right.
Okay, no matter what you said, you were still wrong. So it's a projective test.
Dr. Pam, can you hear me? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. High school students are given the opportunity to take the SATs more than once. This is one way of testing what? Retest reliability, speed, resilience, personality.
A.
That's it. It's not a speed test, right? And it's not about your personality. So if you take it again, right? And so if you studied, you'll get a different score. But if you haven't studied, you'll get the exact same score. Get that one. Okay. Brianna is 7 years old and has a remarkable vocabulary for her age. The counselor wants to give Brianna an IQ test in order to gather more information regarding her cognitive abilities. Test would the counselor use for a 7-year-old? The first one is the WISC intelligence scale for adults, WAIS. The B is the ISC, that's for children. The C is the Myers-Briggs, and D, I have no idea.
B.
Got it. So what are the ages for the WISC for children? 6 to 16.
Okay.
6 to 16, okay? Once you're over 16, you use the A, the WAIS. 6 to 16. It's actually like 6 to like 15.9, whatever, right?
So you would use, after that, you would use the adult one, correct?
You would do the adult one. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you this. So a cyclical test and a spiral test. So a spiral test means it gets harder and harder as it goes up. A cyclical test means it gets harder and harder, but then it goes to another area. So let's say I've got a kid and I start off with knowing if he knows his addition, right? So start off with 2 plus 2, right? So we're getting harder and harder and harder. Okay, that's a cyclical test. And we stop where he stops. But a spiral test, okay, I'm sorry, that's a spiral test. A cyclical test, then if he keeps going to get all the pluses right, then we go next to the subtraction. And then when we get there, we'll go next to the next one, okay? So spiral gets harder and harder as it goes up. Cyclical means, yes, it gets harder and harder and harder, but then it goes to different subjects over and over and over again. Okay. Now, even if I didn't know this at all, one of these things is not like the other. So which of these is not a cyclical test? I just told you what A and C are, right? Okay, now between B and D.
So B.
Absolutely. The Stanford Binet is the oldest IQ test we have. So it was by Alfred Binet, and he is from in France, from Paris. The French government hired him to look at getting kids out of the institutions and putting them into public schools. And us as Americans went over and we decided we'd take it. And it was John Terman from Stanford University. So the Stanford Binet is what we use, but it's the oldest IQ test we have. So even if I had no clue, the SAT is not cyclical. It's just content, right? You're measuring for a criterion in each area. IQ test, right? You know this, and you keep going higher and higher and higher.
Continue to see how much more you know.
Absolutely. Right. Passing the NCE exam is not based on how quickly one completes the exam, but the number of the questions the test taker is able to answer correctly. This is an example of what? Objective, performance, power, or aptitude.
Power.
It's written, so you're not going to get a perfect score. Okay, and they say that you have enough time. The aptitude test is the ASVAB, right? And that's in your potential, what you would be good at. Objective and subjective. Objective are facts. Subjective is what Freud said, right? If you take a survey, that's subjective. That's just my opinion. Okay. The reliability coefficient of 0.60 means what? So if I've got a test and it tells me that this test has a reliability coefficient of 0.60, what does that mean?
B, the 60% of scores are accurate.
All you do is move the decimal point over. 0.60 and 60% means the exact same thing.
Same percent.
Got it, got it. That's all you do. So if we talk about negative 1.0, if you move the decimal point over, it's still 100 or still 100%. So don't get scared by those.
These are literally definitions.
I'm sorry.
These are literally just knowing what these mean.
Did I mention these are the easy ones?
Yeah, you did say just
Really, I swear to you, they're not trying to trick you, okay? Okay. So a client is working with a new client who has difficulty opening up. The counselor decides to take a psychoanalytic approach. Who's that?
Freud.
Got it. And shows a picture of scenes of random people interacting and asking the client to tell a story of what she thinks is going on and identify any emotions that she feels are presenting in the scene. This is a projective test. Which projective test is this? So, which one?
D as in dog.
D as in dog, right? The WACE is an IQ test. The BEX is a depression scale. Myers-Briggs, right? And this is the TAT. That's the black and white photos, right? With the people together. You got to tell me a story, what's happening in the photo. Right? The NCE would be considered what type of test based on these four? A career assessment, an aptitude test, a personality test, or a selected response.
My career is my personality. Is my so D. App selected response test.
That's it. That's it. Okay. Am I going to teach you selected response? No, I'm not. But you know the other things. The aptitude is, again, your potential. I told you already, this is not a predictor test. This is not your potential. It's not a career assessment, and your personality tests are the Myers-Briggs. Okay. So you might see the term like forced choice. Forced choice means yes or no. Okay. So you might see like the dichotomous, that means yes or no too. So all this means is you have to pick an answer. Selected response. You have to select an answer. Okay. A client states they think they might have depression. The counselor administers the Beck depression inventory in order to what? Why would they use the Beck? Measure the severity of the depressive symptoms, measure the level of honesty in the clients, assess the need for medication, or assess the type of mood disorder.
Hey.
Okay. The higher the number on the Beck, what does that mean?
The more severe the depression.
And the more worried I am, right? So if a client scores a very high score on the Beck, I'm probably going to do a suicide risk.
Suicidal, yep.
Right. Right. Oh, the CPC is what? An academic test, an achievement test, an authentic assessment, or an aptitude test. Let's rule out.
Gonna rule out D. I mean,
So if you didn't take the CPCEs you have to take to graduate. If your college, if your school didn't make you do that, so you cannot graduate until you pass the CPCE.
So would it be considered an academic test? Because you need it to graduate. Okay.
But I'm proving something, aren't I?
Achieve.
I've learned something. I've achieved it. Okay. It is an academic test, you're right. But the better one is it's a comprehensive exam. It's what you should have learned in all those years of school. So you're showing this is what I've learned. Not really. You're showing that you know how to take a specific test. Okay. A newly developed intelligence test is said to have a high correlation with the WACE. What does that mean? Okay, so we talked about concurrent. So 1, it has low concurrent validity. B, it has no concurrent validity. C, it has high concurrent validity. Or D, it has high concurrent reliability. So the new test and has a high correlation with the WACE. So what does that mean? We're going to take out anything low, okay, because it says it has a high correlation. So is it valid or reliable?
Reliable. Waste reliable.
It's valid.
Valid.
There we go. It measures what it's supposed to measure. So if the WACE measures adult IQ and this one has a high correlation, then it's valid. It does what it's supposed to do. Okay. Second-year students who have not declared a major in the community college are advised to make an appointment at the Career Center to take the strong interest inventory. Who does that belong to?
Oh.
That's Holland, right? The SDS is a computerized one, but S strong interest inventory is Holland. Okay, even if I didn't know that though, I can still answer this question. The strong interest inventory is a type of achievement, personality, aptitude, or educational and career guidance.
Education and career guidance.
I made an appointment at the Career Center.
Answer keyword.
It's a reading test. I made an appointment at the Career Center. And yes, they could have measured my other thing, but the ASVAB, again, is the aptitude. Personality is the Myers-Briggs. Okay. Anybody take this one? A counselor is working with clients for the first time. The counselor makes note of the client's general appearance, their current state of mind, their emotional state, their attitude, behavior, and speech, thought process, and so on. What is the counselor assessing? What is the counselor conducting? Which assessment is she using?
Mental status examination.
I feel like this was like Family Feud. Absolutely, absolutely.
They gonna pass or play.
Get that one too. Okay. You assembled, your client is interviewed for a labor job. After a round of training, he is asked to come in and work on the assembly line to see how many gadgets he can pack in 10 minutes. This is an example of what?
A speed test.
Got it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. That's all I want to do. Okay. Have I given you this? This is the 750. Did I give you that earlier?
You gave us the 750.
Okay. So this one is under appraisal. Okay. So this week, watch the video, go back and finish the ones under appraisal. Let me know what you don't know for next week so we can go back over it. Okay. So this is just under appraisal. So if you're using test Go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say, what is the book called again? I just want to make sure because
It says 750.
okay.
I'll put it
The
in the
last
chat.
thing she posted in the chat is that book, but she just said go under appraisal to finish the questions out.
Okay. Oh yeah, I have it. It
Okay.
just deleted the like front page, so it's like white. So I just like wanted to make sure I have the right one.
Okay. So it's test.com, but the newest one is the 800, and the 800 doesn't divide it by categories like this one. So that's why I still like this one better, because you can just go in and do appraisal. This is the old domain as opposed to the new one where it has the 6. This is divided by the 8. Okay. And again, I really like this book just for content. Oh, especially under the part where it talks about the appraisals and the research, because I said they're just knowing content. Okay. So let's finish up to go and do your appraisals this week. We'll do next week research, and we'll kind of, do we have 2 sessions or 3 left?
We have
3.
2 left.
2. Oh,
2 after this one. So that'll be research next time. And the last one, we'll do like a final exam, kind of wrap up and go over everything.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I think, so did you get the stuff out of the chat box I put in there?
Yes.
Okay. There's only like 3 things I put in there, just some pictures. Those are already in the Howard book, so I'm not going to put those back in the dashboard.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see that you sent 3 things.
Hold up for you log out. Let me get your account. See my chat.
But in the Zoom chat, not in the
Okay.
dashboard. Okay.
So there's one that's a Google Drive, but when I click on it, nothing happens.
It is, okay. So if you put in normal standard deviation, Wikipedia, that's the one I use.
Okay.
Okay, there's one in the Helig book. I like the one that I use, but it's from Wikipedia, and that's on my drive. It didn't give you permission, it didn't ask you if you could have it for my drive.
No, it just opened
Let me
my
just
drive.
Let me just do it.
And then I have.
Oh, you
You
have
never
to
use,
sign in into Google.
yeah, so let me just, so you can never use Wikipedia in the real world and for test world, but in the real world, it's amazing. Okay, just saying Wikipedia. Okay, let me do it. Put in it from. Try it that way.
Yep, got it.
That's just the one that I like.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, no, that's the one I like either. I'll go up to, I'll put it back in the dashboard because one I like has more than that. Yeah, because that one doesn't have the T-score and the Z-score. Okay. I'll put it in the I'll come back and put it in the on the dashboard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, guys. I promise you, it seems like a lot, but it's really just recall. It really, really is just recall. These are the easy.
All right. Well, thank you, and y'all have a good night.
Bye, guys.
You too. Bye.